The Agile Retrospectives Bingo is an agile coaching tool. It's a serious game that you can use to improve your retrospectives. It starts with bingo cards. Here's an example of one of them, which contains words of behavior that you can see in your retrospective. And this card helps you to recognize this behavior and, as a retrospective facilitator, act on that. If you want to go one step further, there's also a game you can play with this using different kind of behavior cards, and these cards will help people to play a role in a retrospective and to see how this works out to improve your retrospective facilitation skills. How can you use the Agile Retrospective Bingo cards to improve your retrospective? Start by handing out a couple of these cards to people attending the retrospective, and their role will be to be observer. So they will be observing what's happening in the retrospective, and if they see some kind of behavior that's mentioned on the card, they will put a coin on that behavior. And once they get a row on the bingo card, they will shout out, bingo! That's basically, so it's a kind of fun game, but it's also a game which helps you to recognize unproductive behavior in your retrospective and help to practice your skills to deal with this. The Agile Retrospective Bingo can be played in co-located teams, but also in distributed teams. When you download the games, you get PDF files with the cards, with the bingo cards and the role cards that you use in the game. But you also get JPEG pictures of all the cards so that you can also distribute them and use them on online boards and play the game with a distributed team online, whatever works for you. What is unproductive behavior? Unproductive behavior is anything that happens in the retrospective that is not helping the retrospective to reach its goal. It could be blaming, it could be people complaining about stuff, it could be people who are looking outside the room, not being involved in the retrospective. So there's many different kinds of unproductive behavior which is there. And the goal of the Agile Retrospective Bingo game is to recognize this behavior and to deal with this. So let me give an example. Let me share my screen so that you can see what's on the bingo card. So what's the kind of behavior that might happen in your retrospective? Well, it might be somebody who's putting a blame on management, putting the source of the problem outside the meeting. That's not going to help you to solve any problems if everybody's always complaining that it's management that's making it possible for them to do their job. It could be somebody who's not speaking up. Maybe they're afraid to speak, or they don't know how to say stuff in there, or they don't feel comfortable enough to say something. It could be somebody who's continuously interrupting the speaker. So if somebody tries to say something, then somebody else jumps in. That's not going to be really productive if that's happening a lot. Shouting, finger pointing, somebody acting selfish. There's so many different behaviors in there. And these Agile Retrospective Bingo cards collected all these kind of unproductive behavior and creates a game around it to recognize it and to deal with it. The Agile Retrospective Bingo can also be used to train your retrospective facilitation skills. This is all about recognizing unproductive behavior and finding ways to deal with this. If you want to use it in this way, then you will use the Agile Retrospective Bingo card, but you will also use the role play cards to play a game with this bingo. And let me show how that works. So people have the bingo card with all this unproductive behavior on this, and you will hand out the cards for the role play to people who are participating in the retrospective. So for instance, one person will be the facilitator, leading the meeting, helping people to explain themselves, helping people to come up with their thoughts. There's other role play cards you can hand out. There's, for instance, a card which describes a talk a lot role. This is somebody who's talking a lot, doing a lot of stuff, mentioning stuff, maybe interrupting people in there, making jokes, but If it comes to a point that you want to do something, you want to decide, this person doesn't really feel comfortable with that, so we'll start a new discussion in there. Another card would be somebody who's playing the silent introvert. And this person doesn't feel safe enough, feels a bit shy, and doesn't really want to speak up in the retrospective. And they may have good ideas, by the way, but those ideas don't come up in the retrospective because this person is a bit afraid to tell them. Another card, and don't tell me you never saw this in the retrospective. Not my fault. This is a role with somebody who's complaining in the retrospective. Yes, there's lots of problems in this team, but there's nothing that I can do about it. It's not my fault. I'm doing my work. I'm doing everything right. It's other people who are making mistakes. And this is why all of this kind of stuff is happening. So you hand out these cards to the people in the retrospective. They start playing this role, and the facilitator starts facilitating this retrospective and see what's happening in there. And then, of course, these behaviors mentioned on the bingo card, they will pop up for sure because they're related to the roles that we have in there. The silent introvert will be somebody who's not speaking up in there, where the talk a lot will be interrupting people all of the time. So these cards will help to enable this behavior, to make sure that this behavior will surface in the retrospective, and then the facilitator can practice how to deal with this, and the whole team can reflect as a group to see how they deal with this kind of behavior in the retrospective and learn from that. One of the great things of the Agile Retrospectives Bingo is that you can actually play it with remote teams quite easily. So let's go back to the setup that we had with the team when they were playing it remotely. So assuming that there's a couple of people in your team that are doing the role playing there, there's a facilitator, there's somebody playing the role, not my fault, somebody talk a lot, and there's a silent introvert in there, and there's a couple of people who are observing what's happening in the retrospective. So if they see some kind of behavior in there that's mentioned on the card, they can pick a coin and put it on the card, and you can actually work with different colors of coins so that everybody can put their own cards with. You can choose to give everybody their own card, but you can also share a card and work together on this, making it a collaborative game. So, for instance, if this purple person sees that the introvert is silent with feeling unsafe, he may pick a coin and look at, okay, where is it? Yeah, put it on feeling unsafe. If the red observer is looking and seeing that, okay, there's a lot of interruption in the speaker by talk a lot, put it over there. If the talk a lot person is also acting somewhat selfish or egoistic, or maybe this person, not my fault, is saying like, okay, I can't do anything about it, put one over there. And it's been a while since the silent introvert spoke up, so okay, he's not speaking up, he's being silent. So if one of the person even start joking, well, that's when we get into a bingo. So you can make it a collaborative game, you can everybody give their own card, but you can also work together on one retrospective bingo card, work together as a team to make your retrospectives better. If you want to become a better retrospective facilitator, download the Agile Retrospective Bingos from www.benlinders.com. Play this game in your retrospective. Practice the skills, practice with all the different kind of behaviors that are happening in retrospective. Find ways to become a better facilitator.